Eleanor Wilson hummed softly as she stirred the simmering sauce, adding a pinch of oregano and watching it dissolve into the rich tomato base. The kitchen was filled with the comforting aroma of herbs and spices, a scent that normally brought her peace. Today, however, her movements were mechanical, her mind elsewhere, despite the importance of the evening ahead. "Is it almost ready?" Marcus called from the hallway, his voice carrying that edge of impatience she'd grown accustomed to. Over their 7 years of marriage. "Jonathan and Veronica will be here in less than an hour." "Almost," Eleanor replied, keeping her voice steady. "The salmon is marinating, and the risotto needs 20 more minutes." Marcus appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his charcoal gray suit that complemented his salt and pepper hair. At 42, he still turned heads, something he was well aware of. He adjusted his cufflinks, the ones Eleanor had given him for their 5th anniversary, and frowned at the state of the kitchen. "This place is a mess, Ellie. Can't you clean as you go?" He gestured at the array of ingredients scattered across. A marble countertopped out Eleanor bit back a retort. Tonight was too important for an argument. Jonathan Green was considering investing in Marcus's startup, a substantial sum that would finally launch the company Marcus had been building for the past 3 years. This dinner needed to be perfect. "I'll clean up while the risotto finishes," she promised, wiping her hands on her apron. "Everything will be ready in time." Marcus nodded, his attention already shifting to his phone. "Good. I'm going to review some numbers before they arrive. Jonathan might have questions." As he left, Eleanor's smile faded. She turned back to the stove, stirring the risotto with more force than necessary. 3 hours she'd spent preparing. This meal shopping for the freshest ingredients, chopping, marinating, simmering all while trying to ignore the weight pressing against her chest since that morning. The weight of knowledge she wasn't supposed to have done. It had been an accident. Really, Marcus had left his laptop open when he'd rushed to shower, late for a meeting. Eleanor had only meant to close it when the notification had appeared, a message from Jessica, his development director. "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. When can you get away again?" Eleanor had stared at those words until they burned into her memory. She'd clicked, telling herself there must be a reasonable explanation, that she was misinterpreting. But the thread of messages that loaded left no room for misunderstanding. 6 months. Marcus and Jessica had been involved for 6 months, planning rendezvous when Eleanor visited her sister, sharing inside jokes about their deception. In one particularly painful exchange, Marcus had complained about Eleanor's neediness and boring routine. The wooden spoon in Eleanor's hand cracked, startling her back to the present. She tossed it into the sink and grabbed another, blinking back tears that threatened to fall. Not now. She couldn't fall apart now. The salmon needed to be checked, the asparagus prepared, the table set with their best china and crystal glasses. There was work to be done, a performance to deliver. Eleanor moved methodically through the tasks, her mind detached from her body. By the time the doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of Jonathan and Veronica Green, the kitchen was spotless. The dining room glowed with candlelight, and Eleanor had applied a fresh coat of lipstick. She checked her reflection in the hallway mirror, smoothing her dark hair and pinching color into her cheeks. The woman who stared back appeared composed, attractive in her burgundy dress, ready to play the role of the supportive wife. Only her eyes betrayed her a coldness there that hadn't existed yesterday. Marcus called for her, his voice now warm and inviting for their guests. Eleanor took a deep breath and arranged her features into a welcoming smile. A perfect illusion was about to begin. But unlike every other dinner party they'd hosted, Eleanor knew exactly how this one would end. The Green couple entered the Wilson home with the confident ease of people accustomed to being welcomed everywhere. Jonathan Green stood tall and broad-shouldered, his silver hair perfectly styled, while his wife Veronica glided in behind him, elegant in a navy silk dress that probably cost more than Eleanor's monthly salary at the art gallery. "Eleanor, darling, your home is just lovely," Veronica said, air-kissing both of Eleanor's cheeks. Her perfume was subtle but expensive, the kind that announced wealth without saying a word. "Thank you for having us," Jonathan added, handing Marcus a bottle of wine that Eleanor immediately recognized as a vintage that would pair perfectly with the salmon. Of course, Marcus would have mentioned the menu to him beforehand. "We're delighted you could join us," Eleanor responded, the practiced smile never faltering, as she led them to the living room, where she'd arranged appetizers on the coffee table. "Please, make yourselves comfortable," as Marcus launched into animated conversation with Jonathan about market projections and investment potential. Eleanor excused herself to put the finishing touches on dinner. In the kitchen, she leaned against the counter, taking a moment to breathe. The pretense of normalcy felt suffocating. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from her sister Diana. "How's the big night going?" "Knock him dead." Sis. Eleanor stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. Diana didn't know yet. Nobody knew what she'd discovered. For a moment, she considered texting back the truth, but what would that accomplish? No, tonight needed to unfold according to plan. So far, so good, she typed back. "We'll call you tomorrow," returning. To her task, Eleanor arranged the salmon on plates, garnishing them with lemon wedges and fresh dill. The risotto was creamy perfection, the asparagus vibrant green. She'd always found solace in cooking the precise measurements, the transformation of ingredients, the satisfaction of creation. How ironic that tonight's meal would mark the end rather than a celebration. As she worked, Eleanor's mind wandered back through her marriage, searching for signs she might have missed. Had Marcus always been so dismissive of her efforts? When had his ambition morphed into something that crushed rather than inspired? The weekend trips that grew more frequent, the late nights at the office with Jessica, all excused by Eleanor. Because she'd believed in his dream, in their future together. What a fool she'd been. She opened the drawer beside the refrigerator and pulled out the manila envelope she'd prepared that morning after Marcus had left. Inside were printouts of the messages, screenshots, hotel receipts she'd found while searching his email, a damning collection of evidence that would leave no room for denial. Eleanor slipped the envelope into the pocket of her dress, which she'd chosen specifically for this feature. The weight of it pressed against her hip, a constant reminder of what was to come. "Need any help?" Veronica's voice startled her. The older woman stood in the doorway, wineglass in hand, observing Eleanor with curiosity. "Just finishing up," Eleanor replied, placing the plates on a serving tray. Marcus and Jonathan seemed deep in business talk. Veronica rolled her eyes. Jonathan promised no shop talk tonight, but men never keep those promises, do they? She moved closer, admiring the food. "This looks exquisite. Marcus mentioned you were quite the chef. Did he?" Eleanor couldn't keep the edge from her voice. Veronica studied her for a moment. "Everything all right, dear?" "Perfect," Eleanor lied, adding the final garnish to the plates. "Would you mind carrying the wine to the table?" As they worked together setting up the dining room, Eleanor found herself wondering what Veronica would think when the evening took its inevitable turn. Would she be scandalized? Sympathetic? Or perhaps unsurprised? Women, like Veronica, had likely seen countless marriages dissolve among their social circle. "Dinner's ready," Eleanor announced, drawing the men from their animated discussion of profit margins. Marcus's face was flushed with excitement as he guided Jonathan to the table. "Eleanor has prepared something special tonight," he said, his hand briefly touching her lower back in a gesture that once would have felt intimate, but now just seemed performative. As they all took their seats, the candles casting a warm glow. Across the table, Eleanor raised her glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," she said, her eyes meeting Marcus's across the table. He smiled, oblivious to the double meaning in her words, and echoed, "To new beginnings." Eleanor took a sip of her wine, savoring its rich complexity. Yes, she thought, new beginnings indeed, just not the kind Marcus was expecting. The first course passed with pleasant conversation and appreciative murmurs from the Greens. Eleanor found herself operating on autopilot, smiling at appropriate moments, refilling wine glasses, and offering polite responses to Veronica's questions. About her work at the gallery. "Eleanor curates the modern section," Marcus explained, a hint of dismissiveness in his tone. "It's a nice little hobby that keeps her busy." Eleanor's knuckles whitened around her fork. The art gallery was hardly a hobby. She'd built the modern collection from nothing, attracting notable artists and collectors. But Marcus had always minimized her accomplishments, a subtle undermining she'd grown accustomed to accepting. "Actually," she corrected gently, "I was recently promoted to head curator. We're hosting a major exhibition next month, featuring several emerging artists." "How fascinating," Veronica said, seeming genuinely interested. "Which artists? My sister collects contemporary pieces." Before Eleanor could respond, Marcus interrupted. "Speaking of exciting developments, Jonathan, I wanted to show you the new projections for the app's second quarter. The user acquisition numbers are extraordinary." Jonathan nodded, though Eleanor noticed his slight frown at the abrupt topic change. "Perhaps after dinner? I'm quite enjoying your wife's excellent cooking." "Ah, yes," Marcus said, turning his attention to the main course that Eleanor had just served. He cut into the salmon, examining it with sudden scrutiny. "The fish is a bit overdone, isn't it, Ellie?" The room grew quiet. Eleanor watched as Marcus took a bite, his expression morphing into exaggerated disappointment. "I think it's cooked." "Perfectly," Jonathan offered, but Marcus wasn't finished. "And the risotto, it's rather bland." He looked at their guests apologetically. "Eleanor tries, but cooking has never been her strong suit. I usually just grin and bear it." Eleanor sat motionless, the familiar humiliation washing over her. How many times had he done this? Undermined her in front of others, established his superiority through her supposed failings? But tonight, the shame was replaced by something colder, more calculated. "I'm so sorry if it's not to your taste, dear," she said, her voice honeyed. "Perhaps Jessica could cook for you next time. I hear she has many ... talents." Marcus's fork clattered against his plate. His eyes snapped to hers, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face before he composed himself. "Jessica is my development director," he explained to the Greens with a forced laugh. "Eleanor likes to joke about my team." "How long has she worked for you?" Eleanor asked innocently. 6 months now, isn't it? You two have become quite close." The color drained from Marcus's face. Jonathan and Veronica exchanged glances, clearly sensing the undercurrent of tension. "This salmon is truly excellent," Veronica said firmly, attempting to steer the conversation back to safer waters. "Would you share the recipe, Eleanor?" "Of course," Eleanor smiled. "It's all about patience." Waiting for exactly the right moment, she turned to Marcus. "Wouldn't you agree, darling? Timing is everything." Marcus's jaw tightened. He reached for his wine glass, draining it in one nervous gulp. "Jonathan," he said, voice slightly higher than normal, "about those projections. I believe you mentioned dessert, Eleanor?" Jonathan interrupted, clearly uncomfortable with Marcus's persistent business talk. "Yes," Eleanor said, rising from her chair. "I've prepared something special, a surprise." She collected the dinner plates, waving away Marcus's attempt to help. "No, please. Stay. Chat with our guests. I'll only be a moment." In the kitchen, Eleanor leaned against the counter, heart pounding. The script was playing out exactly as she'd anticipated. Marcus knew she suspected something, but was desperately trying to maintain control of the situation. She could see it. In his eyes, the calculation, the fear, the growing realization that he might not escape, unscathed this time. She pulled the envelope from her pocket and placed it beside the dessert plates. Then she arranged small portions of the dark chocolate mousse she'd prepared earlier, adding fresh berries and mint leaves. The presentation was flawless, a final demonstration of her attention to detail, her dedication to creating something beautiful, even if it would be her last act as Marcus Wilson's wife. Eleanor returned to the dining room with measured steps, balancing the tray of desserts with the envelope tucked beneath. The conversation halted as she entered, Marcus mid-sentence about market penetration strategies. His eyes immediately sought the tray, relief evident when he saw only the elegant desserts. "Chocolate mousse," Eleanor announced, placing a serving before each guest, with a raspberry coulis. "This looks divine," Veronica exclaimed, clearly grateful for the interruption of what had become an increasingly uncomfortable dinner. Jonathan nodded appreciatively. "Eleanor, you've outdone yourself with this meal, despite what your husband might think." The slight edge in his voice suggested he hadn't missed Marcus's earlier rudeness. Eleanor sat down, smoothing her napkin across her lap. "Before we enjoy dessert, I'd like to propose another toast." She raised her glass, looking directly at Marcus. "To honesty." Marcus shifted in his seat, reaching for his water glass instead of his wine. "Perhaps we should discuss the investment. Timeline. Honesty," Eleanor continued as if he hadn't spoken, "is the foundation of any successful relationship, business or personal. Wouldn't you agree, Jonathan?" The older man nodded, his expression growing serious. "Absolutely. I never invest in people I can't trust." Marcus's face paled further. Of course. Integrity is one of our core values at Wilson Tech." "Is it?" Eleanor asked softly, finally reaching for the envelope she'd placed beside her plate. "I've been thinking a lot about integrity lately, about promises made and broken." The room fell silent as she opened the envelope, slowly enough that the rustle of paper seemed unusually loud. Marcus's eyes widened, his posture stiffening as he realized what was happening. "Eleanor," he warned, a forced smile still plastered on his face. "This isn't the time." "It's precisely the time," she replied, her voice steady despite the thundering of her heart. She turned to their guests. "I apologize for what I'm about to do, but I believe in transparency. Jonathan, before you invest millions in my husband's company, there are some things you should know about his character." She withdrew the first page, a printed screenshot of messages between Marcus and Jessica. Without drama or accusation, she simply placed it on the table and slid it toward Jonathan. "My husband has been having an affair with his development director for 6 months. He's used company funds to pay for their hotel rooms and gifts." She produced another document, credit card statements with highlighted entries. "He's been planning to leave me once he secures your investment, taking half of our assets, despite the fact that my income has supported his entrepreneurial efforts for years." Marcus lunged across the table, trying to grab the papers, but Jonathan was faster, picking them up with a banker's precision. "These are private. You had no right." Marcus sputtered, his face contorted with rage and panic. "Private like your messages about me?" Eleanor asked, her composure never wavering as she revealed another page. "Like calling me boring and pathetic? Like planning your weekend getaways while I visit my sick mother?" Veronica's hand had moved to cover Jonathan's, both of them, reading with increasingly disturbed expressions. "This isn't what it looks like," Marcus attempted, turning to Jonathan. "Business relationships can sometimes appear inappropriate. Expensing lingerie as office supplies is inappropriate," Jonathan said coldly, tapping the credit card statement. "Planning to misrepresent company assets during investment negotiations is illegal." Eleanor hadn't known about that part. She glanced at the document Jonathan was indicating, seeing details she'd missed in her initial pain-fueled investigation. "Jonathan, please," Marcus begged, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. "We can discuss this privately." "I think we've seen enough," Jonathan stated, standing and helping Veronica to her feet. "Eleanor, thank you for a most illuminating evening." "The dessert," Eleanor said quietly. "You haven't tried it." Veronica gave her a sad smile. "Another time, perhaps." As the Greens gathered their belongings, Eleanor remained seated, watching Marcus's dream collapse around him. He stood frozen, the charming, confident entrepreneur replaced by a cornered, desperate man, when the front door closed behind their guests. Marcus turned to her, his face twisted with fury. "You've ruined everything," he hissed. "Years of work, destroyed in minutes." Eleanor finally allowed herself to smile. "No, Marcus. You did that all by yourself." She stood, collected the untouched desserts, and walked calmly toward the kitchen, leaving him amidst the evidence of his betrayal. Morning light filtered through the blinds of Diana's guest bedroom, rousing Eleanor from a surprisingly deep sleep. For a moment, disorientation clouded her mind before the previous night's events came rushing back. The dinner, the revelation. Marcus's face contorted with rage as she'd packed a suitcase and walked out the door. She reached for her phone, scrolling through dozens of missed calls and messages from Marcus, alternating between desperate apologies and vicious accusations. She deleted them all without reading, then opened her email to find one from Veronica Green, sent at 11:42 p.m. "Eleanor, I hope this finds you somewhere safe and peaceful. What you did tonight took extraordinary courage. Jonathan and I would like to meet with you privately at your convenience." No need to respond immediately. Take care of yourself first. With admiration, Veronica. Eleanor set the phone down, surprising herself with a small smile. The numbness that had carried her through the previous night was beginning to fade, leaving room for other emotions to surface. Grief, certainly, but also relief. And something else she hadn't expected. Possibility. Smell of coffee drew her downstairs, where Diana sat at her kitchen counter, already dressed for her job at the hospital. Her sister looked up, concern etched across her features. "You look better than someone whose marriage imploded last night should look," Diana observed, sliding a mug toward Eleanor. "Is that a compliment?" Eleanor asked, accepting the coffee gratefully. "An observation. When you showed up at midnight with your suitcase, I expected tears. Not ... whatever this calm is." Eleanor wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "I did my crying weeks ago, I think. Before I even knew for sure. Some part of me had already started grieving." Diana nodded, understanding in her eyes. She'd never particularly liked Marcus, though she'd kept that opinion mostly to herself. "What happens now? Divorce, obviously." The word felt strange on Eleanor's tongue, clinical, yet liberating. "Beyond that, I'm not sure." "You'll stay here as long as you need," Diana said firmly. "The guest room is yours. Thank you." Eleanor sipped her coffee, gazing out the window at Diana's small but lush garden. "I might need to take Veronica Green up on her offer to meet." Diana raised an eyebrow. "The investor's wife? What does she want?" "I don't know, but she seemed different from what I expected. Perceptive." The sisters sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Diana had to leave for her shift. Alone in the quiet house, Eleanor found herself doing something unexpected, opening her laptop to work on the upcoming exhibition proposal she'd been neglecting. 3 hours passed in focused productivity before her phone rang an unknown number. "Eleanor." "Wilson," she answered automatically. "Ms. Wilson, this is Jonathan Green. I hope I'm not disturbing you." Eleanor straightened. "Not at all, Mr. Green. I'll be direct. The documents you shared last night revealed more than just your husband's Infidelity. They exposed questionable business practices that concerned me as a potential investor. I'm sorry about that, she began, but he interrupted. Don't be. You did me a service. His voice softened slightly. However, I remain intrigued by the core technology behind Wilson Tech. The application has merit, despite your husband's shortcomings. Eleanor remained silent, unsure where this was heading. I understand you have a background in business administration before your gallery work? She blinked in surprise. Yes, my undergraduate degree. How did you? Veronica is thorough. She looked you up last night. A pause. I'd like to discuss an opportunity with you. The gallery where you work, is it financially stable? Barely, Eleanor admitted. Arts funding is always precarious. What would you say to backing? Investment in expanding the gallery, with you as managing director? Veronica has always wanted to support emerging artists, and your curatorial eye has an excellent reputation. Eleanor nearly dropped the phone. Mr. Green, are you offering a business proposal? One with considerably more integrity than what your husband presented. We can discuss details over lunch tomorrow, if you're available. After scheduling the meeting and ending the call, Eleanor sat motionless, processing what had just happened. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. We need to talk. I can explain everything. This time she didn't delete it. Instead, she typed back, Yes, we do need to talk. Have your lawyer contact mine. Setting the phone down, Eleanor returned to her exhibition proposal with renewed focus. The betrayal still hurt a wound that would take time to heal completely, but for the first time in years, she felt strangely unburdened. The careful image she'd maintained as Marcus Wilson's supportive wife had shattered. But among the broken pieces lay an unexpected gift, the freedom to rediscover herself. She would rebuild, not around someone else's dreams this time, but her own. And that, Eleanor decided as she outlined her vision for the gallery's future, might be the sweetest revenge of all.